this is the problem with our industry is it's not like any other business. It's all very subjective, and it's sort of a luxury industry. But I mean, what other industry would tolerate, or what other union would tolerate making a living and paying dues for 40 years to be paid scale? What other job can you name that would happen, that would even be allowed to happen?
Filmmaker Magazine presents Back to One with Peter Rinaldi.
Jean Smart is an actor. She sat down with me in cyberspace to talk about the work. Do you have a typical way in to a character? Like a road that you like to go down that gets you where you need to get to in order to do the work?
I'm not going to give you a good answer, because it's the same reason I would be a horrible, acting coach or drama teacher, because my answer of why I did a scene a certain way or something like that would just be, well, it just seemed like a good idea at the time. When I read a script, if I can really hear the character's voice in my head, really hear that voice, then I know that I'm hooking on to something, and I'm going to be able to really figure it out and have fun playing with it. If I don't hear that voice right away, then I get nervous, because I know it's going to be a little bit harder. And that's then just when you do the old-fashioned work of, what is their relationship to the other characters in the story, and why, and things like that. But for the most part, it's I hear that voice in my head, and but that's also if the script is written really, really well, that's half the battle right there, at least.
The common thing for actors of all levels, constantly worrying about work, no matter what level they're on. I've talked to all kinds of actors. It's shocking. Some people that admit that, and I'm like, why is this still a worry? So for you, like 3 Emmys and a true amount of respect, are you at a place where you can see roles and really just say, I have to like this, I'm going to be picky? It's not about trying to take what's coming. I could be picky. Are you at that place? And if you are, how long have you been at that place?
I think I've been at that place almost my whole career, and that's not because I'm independently wealthy. Not at all. I mean, it certainly wasn't, ever when I was younger. But I never wanted to take a job for the money. And I know that is an extraordinary luxury for an actor. I'm not saying that I never have. But I do think that worry is always there. Partly because it's not like you're working for a company and you're going to work your way up and you're going to have all sorts of benefits and this and that and and raises and every job comes to an end, and then, well, where's the next one? So there's that natural, just sort of built-in insecurity. And also actors see how sometimes somebody can be just a flash in the pan, the flavor of the month, and then it all goes away. And maybe there's just a natural insecurity that actors have, which drew them to a job where it's like, please look at me, please love me. I was a middle child. I was number 2 of 4, so that's my excuse. I don't know. I think it's a little bit of all of those things. And also, too, I think a lot of people, when they start making good money, and 99% of actors don't, this is the fallacy that's out there. That somebody sees you on television, they think that you're a millionaire. I have a lot of actor friends who barely can pay their mortgage and feed their kids, and they've been seen on television, dozens of times. And also, too, there was a huge shift about a decade or so ago, where suddenly things that actors who were, respectable kind of A actors would not do. They didn't do commercials. They didn't do voice. All of a sudden it became okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so all of these people, hundreds of extraordinarily talented people who made their living, paid their rent and fed their kids on doing voiceovers or doing supporting parts in, TV movies or, doing cartoons or commercials or something. Overnight, that went away because it became okay and cool for recognizable actors and stars to do those jobs. That was a huge shift in the industry, which was very difficult I know I have friends who almost lost their house. And it didn't happen gradually. I think, and also too, there was the point where I think a lot of the studios said, why are we paying all these actors who are doing the supporting parts money when we could just offer them union scale? I mean, they're all desperate. There's 100 people lined up right behind them to take the role. Why are we? And so again, people who were just really good, talented yeoman actors, maybe didn't know their name, made a decent living, but they weren't ever going to play maybe the lead. They gave all the money to the leads and scale to everybody else. So they had to automatically, these actors had to do 10 times more jobs a year just to stay at the same place financially. And that happened very quickly too, which was really, really, really difficult for a lot of people. This is the problem with our industry it's not like any other business, it's all very subjective and it's sort of a luxury industry, but I mean, what other industry would tolerate, or what other union would tolerate making a living and paying dues for 40 years to be paid scale? What other job can you name that would happen, that would even be allowed to happen?
You said something interesting once that got me really thinking. Part of the reason why you have the career you have is because you were never an ingenue. Did you realize this early on? Did you cultivate this? Did you realize this is what's necessary for me to kind of stay in this game?
I did not try to mold that because I mean, part of me would have loved to have come to LA when I was younger instead of, coming here when I was 30 or 29 or 30, whatever I was. I would have loved to have done the Sandra Bullock parts and fabulous rom-coms and all those kinds of things, but that just wasn't my path, and I can't regret that. All the years I spent doing theater were an incredible experience for me. Built a lot of confidence. So I can't say, oh gee, I'm sorry I didn't go to LA, right out of college instead of doing all those, doing theater for years and things like that. Yeah, no, I mean, it would be really hard if you're looking at 40 and you were always sort of the young thing, the cute, pretty young thing. That would start making you feel a little desperate. That's why another reason why I think my theater background was so helpful, because I did every genre of theater in college, played so many different kinds of parts, did so many period pieces, everything from Greek tragedy to Ibsen to Shakespeare to Eugene O'Neill. And I think that's one of the reasons that or at least I feel that I'm versatile, which I'm proud of. It also makes it hard to cast you if you're not really a type. But it seems to have paid off finally. 20 or 30 years ago would have been nice.
One of my pet peeves in TV shows or in movies is when there is a newscaster or an anchor, news anchor, but it's an actor and they don't sound like a news anchor. It's just a certain type of sound. I mean, a certain type of cadence. I don't know what it is. I mean, it bothers me almost every time. When somebody is, I'm like, wow, they hit it. But the other thing, the other pet peeve is when somebody plays a stand-up comedian and they don't, and they don't sound, I mean, it's just it feels like it's other performance muscles that is different. Like you can be the best actor in the world. And if you're playing a stand-up comedian, you don't sound like it. And so the first shot of this show is you as a stand-up comedian. And I almost cringed. I was like, if she doesn't do this right now, I'm out of this. As an audience member, I really thought that. And you nailed it. I mean, thank God you nailed it. Did you think of this? I mean, did you have to figure out how do I sound like I'm not only a stand-up comedian, but I'm a legendary stand-up comedian. And it's not just something that you can just, I mean, unless I'm crazy, does this make sense to you? Like this is a certain way you have
that was really my only concern about the character. The show really is more about her personal life than her actual sets that she does. But oh sure, especially since I'm working with a couple of stand-up comics who do it for a living, you know, it's like, ooh. But and certainly every comic has their own style, you know, has style of delivery and storytelling and things like that. I mean, Rodney Dangerfield is completely different than, you know, Jerry Seinfeld, and go on and on and on. I don't know. I just it just seemed like so much fun that I didn't worry too much about it. And I figured that I would be told right away if it sucked. The only time I really had an audience, there's one scene where I'm on the top of a tour bus and I'm talking to some tourists. That was the first time I ever even had what I'd call an audience. But the only other time I actually had an audience and I'm on stage in the dark, because it was usually there was nobody out there, we shot at the Wiltern Theater, and because it was COVID, they brought in, I don't know how many people, less than 24 people in masks, and they all sat about 6 feet apart. And it was really fun, but I got nervous the way I would do before. When I want to go on stage, it's like, well, why am I nervous? I can just say cut anytime I want. But and also they're paid to laugh, so you know, it's not like they had to buy a ticket. I guess part of it is the theater training on stage, even though in a play you're not talking to the audience, at least not usually. But that feeling of telling a story in front of a live audience, that I owe a lot of it to that. And also I've always enjoyed telling jokes, and especially long, sort of convoluted jokes, you know. I think it's why Hannah is so good. This is basically her first acting job, The Little Picture. And she's so good, she's such a natural, is because she's been doing stand-up for a few years. I think it's the same, it's similar, because you're telling a story, you know, and you're saying things that you know are funny, but you have to say them in a way that seems like you don't necessarily think they're funny. You just, you know what I mean? And it's, I'm so impressed with her. I just think she's amazing.
Well, I was just going to say, like, in a two-hander like this, like, if the other person that you're opposite isn't good, like, this is not just hard work. It's not fun, and it's also a bad product. Was that a real concern? Like, at what point did you come on board with this, and how important was this person that you're opposite, and how involved were you in that? And did you need to make sure that the chemistry was there? I mean,
yeah, or someone said it would be like playing tennis opposite a wet sheet.
I love that.
I cannot say how gracious the producers have been in involving me in casting when they contractually did not have to. I mean, I think I had a little input on paper, but they were very much concerned that I be on board with some of the casting choices. So after they saw hundreds of girls for Ava, and they had narrowed it down to several gals, so they sent me some tapes. And then the ones who were able to meet in person, we actually met on this huge empty sound stage, 30 feet apart because of COVID. That's between us. And I just thought that Hannah was so unique. And plus, I immediately Googled her and watched some of her stand-up. I thought she was so unique. And I believed that she could be a writer.
Yes.
I believed that she could be massively insecure, at the same time very cocky and arrogant. I believed that, I just thought that she was by far the most interesting choice. And so I said to the producers, I said, for what it's worth, that's my number one choice. Luckily, they agreed.
Watching you walk through your home and you do your routine is such an interesting first episode. Like, first of all, this is a wild kind of foreign thing to see somebody living in this way. But it culminates with the way you change out that Coke tank, which is an amazing moment that goes on. I feel like it was so interesting for me as a writer and as a director to see that, because moments like this, I'm locked into a character somehow, and it doesn't seem like it that it would be a moment like that would lock me in. How do you get into the motions of a character?
Again, I go back to, unlike the theater, you have very little rehearsal. And so it's important to kind of walk around the set, and these sets are so gorgeous. It's like it's so much fun to see how they recreated this, and it's all on a soundstage. Because when you're rehearsing a play, you've got 4 weeks usually to use the silverware drawer and move over here to do this and make it look like you live in that environment, even though it's obviously very fake because there's no wall there and you're watching them. But it's those little things that even if an audience can't pinpoint them, why something doesn't feel real, it's because something's just not registering on a subliminal level. That scene with the CO2 or whatever it is, I like that because, first of all, like you said, it just shows that she, knows her way around the house, but also too, she's not above doing stuff like that at all. She's not a diva in that sense.
Right.
She doesn't treat her housekeeper disrespectfully by demanding that she do that. She goes, "Oh, you're busy. I'll do it." Those little things say a lot about character.
So you play Helen, mother of Mare of Easttown, played by Kate Winslet, and these scenes between you two, it feels like just this organic history that of course would be between mother and daughter there, especially ones that have gone through tragedy like this, and it just feels like there's a lot of layers there. How did you guys do this? Like, is this just natural cinema magic or acting magic, or is this like, did you guys work this out?
Acting magic, Peter. It's acting magic.
I knew it.
It's you know what? And it's luck too. I mean, Kate happens to be, besides gorgeous and talented, she's also she's just, she's all about the work. She's in 100% every second, and she's incredibly giving and gracious and open, and I like to feel that I'm kind of the same way, and we just kind of seem to work the same way. We ad-lib a little bit, not too much, but we have fun with it, and it just felt really good, and didn't always look like a pleasure, but it was a pleasure. It was a pleasure, and of course the scenes that are a little more comical, we really had fun, like, the funeral scene and the scene in the car afterwards, and when I'm, outed for my
Yes.
affair.
Oh my God. And what about the farting shoes?
Yeah, I don't, that's the writer. I don't know where the heck he came up with that. So
Oh my God, that's written?
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. I mean, it feels like with this character you channeled my mother a little bit, my dearly departed mother, because she could be very loving, and then all of a sudden she'll turn around and give you an insult, but it's like a loving insult, like when she came to my apartment when I was living in like on the floor of a kitchen with other roommates, and like she came by and she just saw the way I was living, and she just turned to me and said, "You asshole." Your character reminds me of her so much because it's this love too, though, that's in it. I mean, were you channeling anybody?
No. I mean, physically, I thought of my mother a little bit, because I looked like my mom. Who was also dearly departed. She would have loved this. Loved this show. No, I mean, again, I give Brad the credit for writing such great scenes. I mean, and I mean that moment where I'm helping her with her cast after she's been shot, and then she says, "Did you just fart?" And I just smacked her bad arm, and I thought, "Oh dear, that's gonna look terrible," but it just sort of happened. It's like I mean, there's like so many relationships and families. I mean, and when you lose people, in really tragic ways, there's regret, and there's blame, and there's anger, and it's all mixed up with such deep love that it's just really, you can't really separate them. And I hope the love and respect comes through all the insults and everything.
That's what I'm saying. It really does. I don't think anybody's thinking, man, this mother's abusive. Are you surprised by the fandom with this one? Because it seems like people are really, really loving this and really getting involved with it.
I keep getting texts and emails from people saying, "Now, I think I know who did it. Don't tell me, but I think I know who did it. I thought I knew who did it until last night." And they're going crazy, and they're emailing each other, and so finally, whenever they do that, I just say, "Helen did it." And I'm glad, and I do it again.
Do you ever miss multi-camera like comedy work?
Multi-camera is really fun, and that's what I did when I first came to LA. And it was sort of this strange hybrid between camera and stage, because it's like you're doing a little one-act play in front of an audience, because they usually have a studio audience, and except that they can see you waiting to make your entrance, and over and over. And I remember my first job that brought me out here was a show called Teachers Only with Lynn Redgrave, and I remember calling my agent after the first week, after the first episode that we shot in front of an audience, and because we were getting ready to do the show, and somebody said, who's doing the warm-up? And I thought that we were going to all get together and do vocal warm-up or, stretching or something, I don't know what. And they said, no, there's a stand-up comic. He goes up and he warms up the audience. I was like, what? What? What did that was the strangest thing I've ever heard. I mean, you wouldn't do that for a play. I mean, what the hell? And then right before we started, someone said, "Okay, everybody line up for intros." I said, "What's that?" They'll introduce you, and you just kind of wave or something. And then I said, "Before the show?" What? You mean like a basketball team? It was the craziest thing I had ever seen. And so I called my agent, and she was just laughing her head off. She was from the South. She said, "Oh, you poor baby, you really don't know your ass from apple butter, do you?" It was just wild, but it was fun. It was a lot of fun. But there was a period of many, 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 many years where I didn't do anything in front of a studio audience, and I did a guest spot on something. I can't remember what it was, and I found it very jarring. The audience very intrusive, and part of that is those people who go to those shows, the audiences have sort of been consciously or unconsciously kind of trained to react a certain way. So, if there is sort of a touching moment, the whole audience goes, "Oh," somebody kisses. It's like, "Ooh," the whole audience. You're thinking, "Oh my God, no, I cannot do this. This is just terrible."
It's like the reverse of what you were saying. It was like when you pay people to respond, but it goes overboard. It's like it becomes a nightmare.
Also, sometimes the warm-up people are funnier than you are, and the audience resents having to come back to the show, on the breaks, because they're having so much fun.
Right.
They're getting snacks and crazy jokes, and then they go, "Okay, let's get back to our story now."
Are you looking forward to like sinking into multi-year work like this on a show rather than just like a short stint on something?
I've always said that actors become actors because they don't want to do the same thing over and over every day. But no, I'm really hoping the show has a future, and it looks like it might, at least for a while. I have no idea where the story would go, but the producers I know have thought it through. They've got it all in their heads. So we haven't really talked about that yet, but no, I'd be very happy with that. Plus, oh my God, for the first time in so long, I'm shooting in Los Angeles. I'm home for dinner every night. Every night. I mean, that's unheard of.
That's amazing. And these characters are so full. It's like one of those things, like you can go anywhere because of the foundation you guys have created for these characters.
I think so too. Yeah. Well, that's the basis of all shows, is that it doesn't matter what the people do for a living, it doesn't matter where they live.
Exactly.
You fall in love with those characters, you become fascinated with those characters, you'll watch them go anywhere and do anything.
Jean Smart, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Back to One is a production of Filmmaker Magazine, which is a publication of The Gotham, formerly IFP. Listen to back episodes of this podcast at filmmakermagazine.com or wherever you get your podcasts.